Hello and welcome back to another full step-by-step PC build guide, and today I'm going to be showing you how to build a PC in the Montech King 95. Now this case was missing from my case of the year review, and the reason was it was delayed coming out to me by almost 2 months. But better late than never, it has finally arrived, so today I'm going to be showing you how to build a PC in it. So in terms of the other parts I'm going to be building with today, for the motherboard I'm going to be using the ASRock B650E Steel Legend Wi-Fi. For the CPU, I'm going to be using AMD's 7800X3D. Keeping our CPU cool, I've got a 360mm AIO from ENERMAX. It's their AQUAFUSION ADV. For RAM, I've got 32GB of Kingston Fury Renegade DDR5 RGB at 7200 megatransfers per second. For storage, I'm going with a single Gen 4 NVMe drive for this build. It's from Samsung and it's their 990 Pro in 2TB capacity. Powering the whole build, I've got a 1050 watt fully modular ATX 3.0 power supply from Thermaltake. It's the Toughpower GF-A3 Snow Edition. For the graphics card, I'm going to be using the Gigabyte Aorus Master RTX 4070. So in terms of the case fans, because I have got the non-pro version of the case, it comes without any case fans included. What Montech have done is they've sent all the case fans out separately, and I'm going to be mocking this case up exactly the same as their pro version. And it's the pro version that I think you should be buying. This version without any fans costs about £100 currently in the UK, but for only £25 more, you can get the pro version, which comes with 6 included case fans, a PWM hub, and an ARGB hub, and for £25, that is incredible value for money. You're not going to be able to pick this all up separately for that price, so it is the pro version that I recommend that you buy. So as usual, I'm going to start by taking a close look at the case, and you can see this case's standout feature, which is the wraparound glass panel from the front to the side of the case. In terms of removing our tempered glass panel, we've got a captive thumb screw at the back, which we need to loosen. Once it's been loosened, we can simply pull the panel out from the back and lift it up and away. Our other side panel is removed in exactly the same way. We've got a captive thumb screw at the back, which we need to loosen. Then there's a little lever here we can pull out and lift the panel up and away. Taking a look at the back of the panel we've just removed, you'll notice we've got loads of perforations in it for airflow, and the dust filter is built in to the panel. So once you've got the tempered glass side panel removed, removing the front panels is really straightforward. It's just a matter of pulling it forward, and then you're going to be able to lift it up and away. So if you want to go with a more airflow focused build, Montech do include a mesh front panel in the case. Installing it is really simple. You're just going to slot it in at the bottom and push it in place. I'll just pop the tempered glass side panel back on again to give you a look at what the case looks like with the mesh panel. So one of the really nice things about this case is both panels are included, so you can go with either of them at no extra cost. Taking a look at our case's front I/O, we've got a power and reset button, a separate headphone and microphone jack, we've got 2 USB Type A and a single Type C port. Our case's top panel can simply be pulled away. And again, if we take a close look at the top panel, you'll see there's loads of perforations for airflow, and again, the dust filter is built in to the panel. At the top of the case, we've got a removable fan stroke radiator bracket. It's simply held on with 4 screws. And then with the 4 screws removed, we can simply pull the bracket upwards to free it up. And there's little notches here that the bracket slides into. The case supports motherboards up to 80x in size, and if you want to go with the CPR cooler, the maximum height supported is 175mm. In terms of fan support at both the bottom and top of the case, it's up to 2 140 or 3 120mm fans. On the side of the case, it's up to 2 120 or 2 140mm fans, while at the rear of the case, it's up to a single 120mm fan. In terms of radiator support, at the top of the case, it's up to a 360 or 280mm radiator. On the side, it's a 280 or 240mm radiator. But what you are going to want to be careful with on the side is your radiator and fan thickness. You're going to want to keep this below 63mm thick. If it is more than 63mm, it's going to significantly reduce your GPU clearance all the way down to 275mm from 420mm. And on the rear of the case, it's up to a 120mm radiator. There's no radiator support at the bottom of the case, and you can see in terms of the holes we've got at the bottom, you're actually going to screw your fans in at the bottom from the top using long radiator screws. And you'll see that in the very nice case accessory box, Montech do include 12 of these long radiator screws, allowing you to mount up to 3 fans on the bottom of the case. And another really nice touch is that Montech have actually labelled all the compartments on the outside of the box. If you don't want to install fans down at the bottom of the case, there is this optional panel that comes in the case accessory box. It simply slots into place down at the bottom, and you're going to secure it into place here with a thumb screw from the case accessory box. And on this bracket, you're going to be able to mount up to 3 3.5 inch or 3 2.5 inch drives. We do have one more fan mounting location on the front of the case. You might be wondering how that's going to work because we don't have a bracket there, but Montech have come up with a great idea of moving this side bracket to the front of the case. To do this, we're going to have to remove the 2 thumb screws. And then you'll see the door is now free to simply slide round to the front. So when you first look at this, it might look a little bit confusing because it doesn't look like there's anywhere to fix the door to at the top, and the bracket at the bottom doesn't quite line up with the hole here. But this door is actually on a little bit of a swivel, so if you just pull it towards you, the door will slide out, and then the bottom hole is now going to line up down at the bottom. In terms of fixing it at the top, there's a little lever here. All you're going to want to do is pop a screwdriver onto here and then turn it round anti-clockwise, and this lever is going to fall down. So now if I go ahead and close the door, it's going to line up at the top, and we're going to be able to secure this with a thumb screw and use the other thumb screw at the bottom. So there is 2 additional things you're going to have to be aware of if you get the Pro version of the case, which comes with the fans installed. Obviously, to swing this door in and out, if you've got a fan down at the bottom, it is going to interfere with the door. So you are going to have to uninstall this fan, and then that's going to give you room to swing the door. Another thing to be aware of is the reverse fans that are installed on the side bracket of the Pro version of the case are perfect for the side position because they're going to be set to reverse, drawing cool air in from the side of the case. The only problem with these is if you rotate the fans round to the front of the case, if you leave them in the current orientation, they're going to be taking air from inside the case and exhausting out the front. And that is definitely not what you want. You're going to want the front of your case as intake. So what I would do is, if you are planning on moving this to the front, is take the 2 fans off of the side of the case and get 2 standard 140mm fans for the front. You could simply turn them round, but the problem is the ARGB lighting bar is then going to be facing towards the bracket at the back, and you're not going to see the lighting effects. And you'll see on our back panel here, there is additional hole mounts allowing you to mount 2 120 or 240mm fans on the side, even if you do rotate this bracket round to the front of the case. So if you've got the Pro version of the case, my advice is take the 2 fans off the sliding bracket and put them onto here in the same orientation, and pick up 2 additional 140mm fans for the bracket at the front, and they would be the standard fans that you're going to want. And on the bottom of the case, we've got a full-length dust filter, which can simply be pulled out from the back. At the rear of the case, we've got 7 horizontal PCI expansion slot brackets, and the case is compatible with GPUs up to a maximum length of 420mm. And just before we move into the rear compartment, I want to point out that we've got rubber grommets all the way around the motherboard. Moving into our case's second compartment, and we've got this very nice cable covered door. It's held on with 2 screws, and with the screws removed, we can simply open up the door. If we take a look at the inside of the door, you see we've got mounting slots for 2 2.5 inch drives, so they're going to simply slot in here, and then you're going to screw them in from the other side. So there's 2 options for this door. You can leave it on during the building process, although you do want to remove it. All you need to do is free it up from the top by pushing the panel this way here, so we do that. And that's going to free the top one up, and then you can simply lift it up and away. So with our cable cover door removed, you can see that Montech have included 3 Velcro cable straps in the middle of the case for managing your cables, and in terms of rooting space, we've got absolutely loads of room. I don't see any other tie points down at the top or at the bottom, so they do look to be relying on these 3 Velcro cable straps to manage all your cables. So another really nice touch is Montech have used white cables in the white case. So in terms of the cables we've got our front panel Type C, our USB 3.0 to let the 2 USB Type A ports in the front of the case work. We've got our HD audio for separate headphone and microphone ports on the front of the case. We've got an ARGB cable, and if we plug this into an ARGB header on our motherboard, it's going to let us control that lighting bar on the front of the case. And really nice to see our front panel cables are all organized into a single cable. So if you do have the Pro version of the case, you might like to use the reset button on the front of the case to control your case's built-in ARGB hub. And with the Pro version, you do include this front panel connector cable. So it simply is going to plug in to here, and that is then going to give you separate pins for your power LED and your power switch. But what you'll notice, instead of a reset switch, we now have this LED button. And the idea behind this is you're going to have your fan and ARGB hub at the top of the case if you've got the Pro version of the case, and you're going to be able to plug this LED cable into the controller. And then the reset button on the front of the case is going to be able to cycle through the various ARGB effects on the included controller. Obviously, because I've got the non-Pro version of the case, I don't have this controller, so I'm not going to plug this cable in. Our power supply is going to go down at the bottom of the case, and we've got this little bracket with a rubber pad on it to rest our power supply on. And the case is compatible with full-size Datex power supplies up to a maximum length of 190mm. At the back of the case, we've also got a hard drive cage. I'll show you how to access the drive trays in a minute, but I just want to point out that we are able to mount a 2.5-inch drive on the outside of the drive cage. We've got these little rubber mounts here. You're going to take your drive cage and screw in these little standoffs to the back of it, and it's just a simple matter of lining these up with the rubber pads and pushing into place to secure your drive. So to get access to the drive cages, we're going to have to loosen this captive thumb screw at the top, and then with it loosened, we're going to be able to slide the panel upwards to free it up. So you can see here we've got our two drive trays, just a matter of squeezing these together, and then we're going to be able to slide the drive tray out from the back. And in terms of mounting in each of these drive cages, you're going to be able to mount either a 2.5-inch or 3.5-inch drive. If you want to make yourself some additional space at the second compartment, we've got 4 screws here, and it would just be a simple matter of removing these screws to allow you to move the hard drive cage if you want. So I've already mentioned the version of the case I think you should be picking up is the Pro version, which comes with 6 case fans, an ARGB hub and a PWM fan hub for only £25 more. And really the only reason not to get this is if you don't like Montech's fans. But the fans look to be pretty good. They're PWM fans, and Montech have sent me the same fans out that would come in the Pro, so I'm going to go ahead and install them now. So I'm going to set 3 120mm reverse fans down into place at the bottom, and we're going to install them with the long radiator screws that come with the case. And then just pass all the cables through to the back. We can set a forward-facing 120mm fan into place at the back, and then we'll secure it into place at the back with the screws that came with the fan. And then we can set 2 140mm reverse fans onto place on the side, and we'll screw them into place at the back. Next thing to do is get all the cables connected up to our 2 hubs. So I've got an ARGB hub here. So all I'm going to do is take the ARGB cable coming from each fan and plug it into the hub. So I've only got a 6-port hub, so I'm not able to plug in the ARGB cable coming from our case's ARGB lighting strip, so I'm going to have to plug it in separately to the motherboard. Again, another advantage to buy the Pro version. It has 10 ports for ARGB and 10 ports for PWM, so you're really going to have to plug one cable in from it. In terms of the hub, we've just got one ARGB cable which we need to plug into an ARGB header on our motherboard, and to power the hub we've got a set of power connector which we're going to have to plug in. So because I'm not installing any hard drives, I'm just going to simply tuck this into the hard drive cage. Next I've got a PWM hub, and we're just going to plug our PWM cables coming from each of the fans into it. For most fan hubs, one of the ports is marked out, and it's port 1 in this one, and it's the one that the motherboard is going to be able to read the speed from, so you are going to have to plug one of the cables into port number 1. This is a 10-port hub. It doesn't matter which of the other ones we actually plug into, but one fan must go into fan port number 1. So again, we're going to need to power the hub, so there's a SATA cable to plug into our power supply. And again, we've got a PWM cable which needs to go into a PWM fan header on our motherboard. And again, I'm just going to tuck the hub into our hard drive cage and then just route all the cables around the Velcro cable straps. So again, my recommendation is save yourself the money and the hassle of having to do all this yourself. Buy the Pro version. It's going to come with a 10-port ARGB and fan hub, and everything is going to be plugged in for you. And again, in most of my videos, I normally leave installing the fans towards the end of the video, but because I'm strongly recommending you get the Pro version of the case, I wanted to have the fan set up exactly the same way at the front as you would get when you buy the Pro version. Okay, let's start working on the motherboard. To open the socket cover, we need to push this lever down and out, bringing it all the way to the middle of the motherboard, and then we're going to be able to open the socket up. We can then take our CPU, dropping it down into the socket, making sure we've got the text lined up the correct way. And once we're happy it's in the socket, we can go ahead and close the socket cover down, close our lever again to secure our CPU in the socket, and we'll put the black bit of plastic in the motherboard box for safekeeping. To install the brackets for our CPU cooler, we're going to need to remove these stock clips. They're each held on with 2 screws. And then we're going to want to use these brackets. They come in a little bag labelled M4, M5, and we're going to screw one of these onto each corner. Again, don't lose these. The best place to keep them is the motherboard box. To install our M.2 SSD, we're going to need to remove the top heatsink. It's held on with 2 screws. We can then slide our M.2 SSD into the slot, and you'll notice that when we flatten it down, the same screw that holds our heatsink in place is also going to secure our drive in place. If you're using the motherboard from new, there'll be some plastic protection on the back of the heatsink that you're going to need to remove. We're going to be installing our RAM in the 2nd of 4 slot along from the CPU, so we'll open the clips on these slots. Then we can line our RAM up with the slot. Once we're happy everything's lined up, it's just some firm pressure and it's going to clip into place. Then it's exactly the same thing with our second stick. We're going to go ahead and line up the slot, and then again some firm pressure to get it to clip into place. Next we can set our motherboard into the case, line that up with the standoffs at the back, and once we get it over the middle standoff, it's going to help hold the motherboard in place. We're then going to use 9 of the screws with a little lip around the outside to secure the motherboard to the case. Next thing to do is get our front panel connectors plugged in. Our HD audio cable is going to go down to this header in the bottom left hand side of the motherboard. So we'll go ahead and bring it through the cutout. We're going to line it up with the header, and we're going to plug it in with the HD audio text facing up the way, and then pull the excess cable through to the back. We've got one of this motherboard's 3 ARGB headers down at the bottom of the motherboard. I'm going to bring the ARGB cable coming from our hub through, line it up with the header, and push into place. And then we've got some system fan headers down the bottom of the motherboard. We'll bring the cable coming from our PWM hub through, line it up with the header, and push into place. Our front panel cable is going to go into this header at the bottom right hand side of the motherboard, and we're going to want to plug it in with the front panel text facing up the way, and then we'll pull all the excess cable through to the back. Our USB 3.0 cable is going to go into this header here, so we'll bring it through the cutout, line it up with the header, and push into place, and pull the excess cable through to the back. Just below that, we've got our front panel Type-C header, so we can bring our cable through, line it up with the header, and push into place. We've got another 2 ARGB headers at the top of the motherboard, so I'm going to bring the ARGB cable coming from our case's lighting strip through, line it up with the header, and push into place, and then we'll pull the excess cable through to the back. We are now ready to install our power supply, and it is fully modular, coming without any of the cables plugged in. I've gone ahead and plugged the cables in that we're going to need. So I've plugged in 2 8-pin EPS cables to provide additional power to our CPU, our 12-volt high power cable to power our graphics card, our 24-pin motherboard cable, and I've also plugged in a SATA power cable to power our fan and ARGB hub. We can set our power supply into place at the back of the case, and we'll secure it into place before the power supply screws from the case accessory box. So our power supply has a 0 fan mode. Whenever the power supply is under low load, the fan will stop spinning, helping reduce noise. So we're definitely going to want to have that turned to on. Our 2 8-pin EPS cables are going to go into these headers at the top left of the motherboard. So we can bring the cables through the cutout at the top, line them up with the headers, and push into place. And then we'll just pull all the excess cable through to the back. Our 24-pin cable is going to go into this header here, so we'll bring it through the cutout, line it up with the header, and push into place. And again, just pull all the excess cable through to the back. Finally, at the back of the case, we've got the 2 SATA cables coming from our fan and ARGB hub to plug into the SATA cable coming from our power supply. We're now ready to start working our AIO, and the first thing to do is set our fans onto the radiator, making sure the cables are coming out towards the back of the case. Then we're going to use the long radiator screws that come with the AIO to secure the fans to the radiator. Coming from each of the fans, we've got 2 cables. The first is a 4-pin PWM connector, and with the AIO we get this triple splitter cable. So it's just a matter of plugging each of the PWM connectors into the triple splitter cable. So that's now going to leave us with one 4-pin PWM connector to plug into the CPU fan header. The other cable coming from each fan is a 3-pin 5-volt ARGB cable, and we are going to be able to daisy chain them together because there's an additional cable coming from each of the fans. So all I'm going to do is take the middle fan, and I'm going to pull the protective cable off the additional header and plug the cable from our first fan into it. Then I'm going to take our last fan, remove the protective cable, and plug the second fan into it. So with the AIO, we get this double splitter cable because there's going to be ARGB on the pump. So we can pull the protective covering off, and then we're going to plug the cable from our last fan into it. And that's going to leave us with an ARGB header, which we need to plug into an ARGB header on our motherboard. And then we've got an additional header here to plug our pump into. If your motherboard doesn't have an ARGB header, or you don't want to use it for whatever reason, there is this little controller that comes with the AIO. Just a matter of plugging this cable into the bottom. It's got a SATA power cable in it, and plug that into your power supply to power it. And then if we take this off, we've got a standard 3-pin 5-volt ARGB header on the end of it. And if we plug this cable into it, we're going to be able to press these buttons on the controller to cycle through the ARGB effects. I think I'm just going to plug this into my motherboard. Taking a look at our pump, we've got this 3-pin fan cable coming from it, and we need to plug this into the pump header on our motherboard to power our pump and allow us to control its speed. Because it does have a 3-pin connector rather than a 4-pin connector, we're going to have to make sure we run it in DC mode. Our AIO does have some lighting on it, and to access that, there's a little rubber cover here we need to remove. We've then got this additional cable coming with our AIO. It's labelled RGB connector 5 volt. And all we're going to do is plug it into the connector here. There we go. And on the other end of that, we've got a 3-pin 5 volt ARGB cable, and that's going to go into that little splitter cable that we're going to plug into our motherboard. Or of course, you can also plug that directly into the controller. And then I'm just going to remove this little label here. We're also going to need to fix the brackets to allow us to secure this to our motherboard. Because I've got an AMD motherboard, I'm going to use the AMD bracket. So it just simply slots into place here. And then we're going to use 2 of the small screws to fix the bracket into place. And then it's exactly the same thing on the other side. Then we can set our top radiator bracket into place, and we'll secure the AIO to the bracket with the short radiator screws. I'm then just going to lower our AIO down into place, but before I actually put it down fully, I'm just going to pass all the cables through to the back. Okay, that's all our cables pulled through to the back. We can go ahead and lower our AIO down to place, and then it's going to clip in at each corner. And then we can secure the radiator bracket into place at the top with the 4 screws. And then at this stage we can replace our case's top panel. Our CPU fan header is this one here at the top of the motherboard. We'll line it up at the top and push into place. We've also got another ARGB header here at the top of the motherboard, so we'll bring the ARGB cable coming from the fans through. We'll get it pushed into place and then just pull all the excess cable through to the back. Just before we install our I/O, there's some plastic protection in the cold plate we're going to need to remove. Next we can add some thermal paste to the centre of the CPU. It does come included with the cooler. Then we can line the I/O up with a bracket on the motherboard, and we're going to get a thumb screw onto each corner. And then it's just a matter of tightening each thumb screw up in turn. Our pump header is this header here next to our CPU fan header. So take the cable coming from our pump and plug it into the header. Then just going to route this cable up towards the top of the motherboard. And the ARGB cable I'm just going to pass through to the back of the case. At the back of the case we've got that double ARGB cable we plugged in earlier on. We'll remove the plastic protection and plug the cable coming from our pump into it. And we can then remove the plastic protection from the I/O. We're now ready to install our graphics card, so we're going to need to remove the second and third slot cover from the top. And then we can open the clip on the motherboard. And then it's just a matter of lining our graphics card up with the slot. Once we're happy it's lined up correctly, it's just some firm pressure to the graphics card and it is going to clip into place. And then we can go ahead and secure it into place with the 2 thumb screws we've just removed. And then we can bring our 12 volt high power cable through the cutout at the bottom, line it up with the graphics card and push into place. Last thing to do is some cable management so we can get the panels back on again. So that's the build complete and looking absolutely amazing. The parts all went so well together, including this AIO. The fans on it actually look really similar to the Montech fans, so they all work really well together. As you can see, I've gone ahead and set the PC up off camera. I've made a similar build guide to installing Windows, all the drivers, adjusting all the BIOS settings. So if you don't know how to do any of that, I'll put a link to that video in the description. But what I want to do now is take a look at the temperatures. So our 7800X3D idled at 41 degrees and reached a maximum of 71 degrees during a 10-minute IDA64 stability test. Our RTX 4070 idled at 29 degrees and reached a maximum of 52 degrees during the stability test. Noise levels were really good, and we had an average noise level of only 34 decibels at idle and 45 decibels under load. So really happy with both the temperatures and the noise in this build. And in terms of the aesthetics, I think it looks absolutely amazing. You would not know that this is a budget case that can be had for less than £100, or when you factor in the fans as well, for less than £125. And the only thing budget about Montech is the prices. Everything else in this case feels really, really premium. I was meant to have this case about 2 months ago. I'm not quite sure what happened with the shipping, so I'm not planning on doing a separate review. I'm saving the full case reviews for the cases that are pre-release, so when that case releases, you can get all the information that you need. But I will spend a couple of minutes sharing my thoughts on the case. And I think by far this is the best Montech case that I have ever reviewed. And as I say, every time I look at their cases, they just keep getting better and better. And as I've said, the only thing left with the budget to do with this case is the price, and everything else feels really, really premium. In terms of the panels going on and off, the mechanisms for securing them, all the screws, all the cables, the rubber grommets, everything in this case feels really, really premium, and Montech have done an absolutely exceptional job with it. How the tempered glass wraps around the front and the side is brilliant. There is a little bit of a glare when you look in for where the panels join, and I think again that's just with the curve in the glass, it's always going to give that type of appearance. But again, really happy with how it looks. In terms of the accessories that Montech include, you've got absolutely loads of drive mounting locations in this case, using that bracket on the bottom. It's absolutely brilliant. They've included that separate front panel if you want to go with a more airflow focused build. And their fans are actually pretty cheap, so if you want to add extra fans in at the front and keep the fans on the side, you're not going to break the bank having to do that. Love the case accessory box. Not only have they individually packaged and individually separated all the screws, they've also marked them on the front of that accessory box to let you know what each of them does. And it's also the little touches that they've gone to, color matching the case cables, so they're going to look really good, including the front panel connectors, combining them all into a single header. The ARGB lighting strip on the front. There is absolutely so much to love about this case. Is there anything I don't like about it? No. Anything else Montech could add to it to make it even better? I think really the only thing missing from this case is a GPU support bracket. But at the price I've paid for it, I don't really expect that, given all the other premium features that Montech have included in it. So should you go out and get this case, and I'm going to surprise you after saying all those nice things about it, the answer is most definitely no. You should not get the Keen 95. What you should get is the Keen 95 Pro. As I said, for only £25 more, you're getting 6 really good case fans. They look good, they run quiet, they're nice PWM fans, and you're getting the PWM fan hub and also an ARGB hub, and a whole lot less hassle, not having to install the fans or route any of the cables at the back, because Montech will do all that for you for a very small price. So you should most definitely get the Pro version of this case rather than the standard version. So I absolutely love this case. Really pleased that Montech continue to make their cases better and better with each one that they do, and really excited to be checking out their next case, because I have no idea how they're going to make it any better than this. So hopefully you have enjoyed this full step-by-step build guide. If you have, please remember to give it a thumbs up. And if you're not currently subscribed to the channel, please hit the subscribe button as well. Thanks for watching.